Hey, community group leaders and apprentices. First of all, just let me say thank you so much for the way that you are serving our community groups. God is doing some really amazing things with our church and through these groups, and you are a huge part of that. Thank you very much for all that you are doing. Miss Naomi and I are here to basically just kind of give you a little bit of a refresher on some of the things that we talked about last summer, and also to just kind of remind you of some of that information we covered so that we can continue to finish strong as we're going through the end of this year here. Nothing more important than the way that we actually set a culture of invitation within our groups, and even just that we hold that personally, even on Sunday mornings and in other places in regard to our community groups.
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, just being a good example of that. I mean, being that leader and that apprentice that is really actively having that spirit of invitation and actively getting new people, part of the group. And what does that look like? And so are you personally doing that?
Yeah, because the more you're doing it, the more your group members will do that as well. And so if you can lead in that way, that would be really, really awesome. Right. And along those lines, make sure that you are encouraging your group members to invite others, yeah. Right? If you're talking about it when you meet as a group, then odds are they're going to be thinking about it more when you're not together. The likelihood of that happening is going to grow, and that's what we're looking for.
Absolutely, and that encouragement goes a long way. And you can even kind of do it as like a competition, or maybe even in a group setting. So I know this past Christmas for our community group, we sent out Christmas cards, and we invited people to come to the groups that we knew that weren't connected to a community group already. Yeah. So it was just another way of, as a leader myself, encouraging those in our group to go ahead and have that spirit of invitation. And maybe it wasn't so scary because it was a group kind of a setting. I don't know. And
don't forget, the whole vision for disciple making and multiplication is that we invite in order to multiply, right? And so make sure that you're recasting that vision for your group. We want to encourage invitation and this culture of invitation in order that your group might be able to get to a place where it can multiply, and we as a congregation can continue to move along those lines as well. Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So next thing we wanted to mention then is just this idea of how it is that the group ought to be sort of organized by you as a leader. The main priority here that we want to focus on is that as a community group leader, and even as an apprentice when you're leading as well, we want you to be in the role of facilitator for the conversation that is happening, not necessarily the teacher of a class.
Yeah, that's very important, because as a leader, as that facilitator, it's very important to have everybody talking at some point and making sure that you are doing more listening than talking yourself, because in that you are then looking around the room and kind of seeing, okay, this is going on with this person. This is where this person is spiritually. This is how I need to follow up later in the week, that kind of a thing, to where instead of just having, while the community group material, of course, is great.
Absolutely.
Absolutely great.
Appreciate your sensitivity there.
Yes, you hear my heart. Is that we're not necessarily just 100% following that. We're not just, going through all and checking the boxes and going through all those questions, but to really, have that discussion and move that around.
Yeah, if the goal is transformation, right? We want to see people's hearts change. We want to see people on mission for Christ. We want to see people living out the mission in maybe in ways that they never have before. Then we want them to be transformed by God's word, and many times that happens as they are actually processing that. Right. Many times people don't even know what they really think about it until they say it out loud. If we are saying it for them, they may not actually be internalizing that. And so we want to make sure that we're giving people an opportunity to respond to how the Holy Spirit is leading in them, not just in how the Holy Spirit is leading in us as leaders as we're teaching a lesson. So as we're facilitating there, we're going to really have an opportunity to have them speak out of the abundance of their hearts. That's when, as you had mentioned before, that's when you'll really be able to hear those phrases from the stage to know, hey, where are some follow-ups that we might need to have and everything there.
Right.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
So the next thing we want to hit here is covenants. We had mentioned something about this, obviously over the summer, but it was in community group material early in the year. But these covenants are really important, and we want to follow up with you just to make sure that you remember what's in those so that you can go over those with your team members too.
Yeah, and where to find them. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we don't always, send all of that out, but it's all on the website. So it's at hfcog.org/community groups. So you can find a button for each place that, where you are in the group. So if you're a member, you're a leader, you're an apprentice, you're the coach, you can just click on that and you can see all of the covenants there.
Yeah, and if you haven't had those conversations yet, obviously we were hoping it would have happened in the fall, but if that hasn't happened yet, still not too late.
That's right.
Make sure that you are intentional about having those conversations with your group members now so that they know kind of what's expected. And maybe you've had some of those conversations sort of peripherally, right? You kind of mentioned here or there, but it's really important just to have those real direct conversations of like, okay, here's the covenant, here's what we're signing up for. Is this what you are expecting in terms of being a part of a group? Right. And here's what you can expect from me as a community group leader as well.
So with that direct conversation, we told you where you can find the covenants, but just to go through those as a member, it's very important that as a member of the group that you, as a leader, are encouraging that member to make attendance a priority.
Yeah.
And that it's absolutely a priority that this is what they're going to be. It's not a, I'm going to come when I can, that kind of a thing, but absolute priority and involvement and participation and everything in the group and what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is where you really see the difference between someone who is just sort of coming and going as opposed to someone who really wants to say like, yeah, hold me accountable as a member of the group, right? You may have people who say like, yeah, I can't commit to be here every week, or I'll be here when I can, and you just need to know like that's fine. They can be here when they can, but then you may not necessarily be following up with them in the same way that someone who's more committed to the group and more committed to the disciple making process than that person is there. So that's where the covenant can really help you see like where are these people in terms of that.
And so just kind of following up on that, like when maybe they're not able to make it, those kind of things. But as a leader, to be able to say, you know what, when could you make it? Maybe just being a little open to, maybe our group is not the best fit for you. Maybe Saturday at 4 or Tuesday at 7 or whatever that looks like is not the best time.
Sure.
So you know what? We should, as leaders, be able to be very versed in the other groups that are out there and to know when they are and who are leading those groups so that we are able to say, you know what, I know like personally for my group on a Tuesday night it's not working, and I know that your schedule has changed. So you know what, maybe Thursday at 10 with Pastor Sarah.
Maybe Saturday evening could work well.
Exactly, yeah, all of those things, but to be able be able to know and be able to speak and be able to say, hey, this is it. And as we're having that culture of invitation and that spirit of invitation there, it's inviting to your group because they know you're having a relationship with them, that kind of a thing. But the other side of it too is that, if your timing doesn't work, you should be able to just say, hey, let's get you plugged in somewhere.
Absolutely. And as you're having these conversations with your group members, obviously confidentiality is going to be a big part of that, right? And so that's part of the covenant as well. I think that's probably the one that everybody's just like, oh yeah, definitely, we're all about that. But the one that people usually sort of like, they get to ask some questions about is when it talks about engaging with a disciple maker. This is a really important part of this. And just to be clear, you don't have to be the disciple maker for everybody in your group, but you can be a really important part of helping them get connected to a disciple maker that can really make an investment in their lives.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here to help you with as a staff of helping with these community groups, is that we have people that want to disciple someone.
Right.
So if there is not someone in your group that they can connect with, if you are not able to be that person, then reach out and let us know, and we can make sure that happens.
Yeah, no, we actually absolutely want to make those connections happen there. So for you then, as a community group leader and as an apprentice, there are some things that you have committed yourself to through the covenant as well. Simple things like you're going to pray for the members of your group each day. Like that's a big deal, right? We're talking about life transformation here. We're not just talking about people learning more about the Bible or knowing more about God. We're talking about people's hearts being changed.
the other thing too is to, again, we talked about that spirit of invitation. So making sure that we all have that responsibility of inviting new members to our group. And then as a leader is that we are not just growing our group, but we want to multiply our group.
Definitely.
So that's the vision.
Yeah,
That's
the goal is not to stay together forever.
That's right.
The goal is that your group would grow in such a way that it can multiply, the new leaders would come up, that the goal is to send, the goal is not to stay. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as we're working through that, and we're working through those relationships with our apprentices, and recognizing where people are and the interests that they have and the way God is leading them to have their own group, those kind of things.
Obviously, you should have made contact with a community group coach several times by now this year. And so you want to make sure that you are being intentional about connecting with your coach. We don't want anybody to feel like they're doing ministry in isolation, that they're doing anything by themselves. Your coach is there to be a support for you, to be praying for you. That's part of the covenant that your coach has, is to be praying for you, right? And to be a resource that if you need to talk through some things, you got questions about stuff, maybe there's sort of, an issue going on in your group or whatever, your coaches are there to help you process through those things. Now that we've talked about covenants, let's jump into talking about apprentices just a little bit more. We sort of touched on that with the leader covenant. But obviously it's important for all of our groups not only to have a community group leader, but also an apprentice. I realize not every group has an apprentice, but if you don't, make sure that you are really just committing that to a point of prayer in order that God might help you discern and see who it is that could serve in that role. Right.
So I raised my hand just to show you guys that, you know what, it happens. I mean, it's one of those things that's the goal. We of course want that. I want that. Our group wants that. We just aren't there yet.
Yeah,
so
and I didn't have one to start the year in my group either. I just recently set up Rebecca Cox as an apprentice for our Saturday group. But yeah, it's going to come at different times and all that kind of stuff. That's not a problem. We just want to make sure that we're trying to be intentional about setting that up there. Right. And then for those of, go ahead. Oh,
no, I was just going to say that is something that your coach can really help you with.
100%, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, in really working through that, because those conversations that you're having with your coach is who is in your group, helping identify people where they are spiritually and that kind of thing. And then sometimes it's just really asking. We can assume all day long that so-and-so does not want to be an apprentice because they're super busy, they're a full-time job, they've got kids, they've got this, they've got that, and maybe we haven't ever asked. So
sometimes
work with your coach on that.
Yeah, sometimes what can be really great is just to pull somebody aside and have what some people refer to as an I see in you conversation, right? Like, hey, I know, we've been a part of this group for a little while. One of the things that I see in you is that you have some leadership qualities that other people in the group are noticing. Maybe you might want to, maybe we could prayerfully discern how God might be leading you into being an apprentice or something like that. Those I see in you conversations are really important, can make a really big impact sometimes. Now, for those of you who already have an apprentice, what we want to encourage you with is to make sure that you are giving that individual plenty of opportunities to lead, because as they lead, that's where you're going to be able to help disciple them even more, not only in terms of how to facilitate a group, because remember, we're not just wanting them to teach a class, we want them to facilitate a conversation. You're not just teaching them how to facilitate a conversation, but you're also teaching them how to follow up on those conversations and how to disciple people outside of groups and how to help them kind of lead others through the discipleship wheel. And as you give them those leadership opportunities, you're going to see a lot of fruit that comes through your apprentices.
Yeah, absolutely. And in doing that too, then you will find where your members are starting to connect and engage maybe with that apprentice a little differently. And then that could be the start of where that group is. It's going to multiply. And then that's when you're sitting in your room with yourself and like somebody else.
Right.
What just happened?
Which is a beautiful thing.
Great.
Because that's multiplication.
Do it again.
Yes.
Awesome.
That's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah. So, but it's really good because.
And so with that as well, make sure that you are also meeting with your apprentice outside of the group time, right? So you want to make sure that you're processing what happened in the group. Maybe I know that for the times when I've been working with an apprentice, Many times it's just talking through like, hey, when this happened in group, what did you notice? Or what maybe could we have done differently? Or, those kinds of things. Or if you had to do it all over again, that kind of stuff. Being able to process that is super important,
right.
And not just about the group. Like it's really important that the first question you ask of your apprentice is, how are you?
Yeah.
Right? We've got to make sure that we are loving on each other well.
Yeah, and that's really important, because you know what, it kind of can be kind of scary sometimes, maybe for
Absolutely.
that apprentice to feel like they have to do the whole thing. So when you're working with your coach and looking what that's going to look like,
Yeah.
just kind of maybe split some responsibilities. Maybe they start the group
Yep.
off. Maybe they open in prayer. Maybe that kind of a thing. They do one of the storytellings. However,
Yep.
whatever that looks like. But that way you're kind of dividing and conquering, that kind of a deal, and you're not kind of just floundering out there and leaving that person all by themselves.
Yeah, those shared responsibilities are really good, and then you can kind of work up to a point
Yes.
where the apprentice can
It's
kind of
like
take a whole day all to
Yeah.
themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's great for you as a leader.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It's really, really great.
That
yeah.
is great.
All right, so that is all the information that we wanted to get across to you today. But you might be wondering, why in the world is Naomi in this video with us? Well, the entire reason is that we have sort of reassigned some responsibilities within our staff. And so Pastor Sarah is taking on some administrative functions, while Naomi is taking on community groups and helping with networking through her role as Connections Director, which she was already doing anyway. And now she's going to be more connected to you, helping you stay connected with new members and your coaches and trainings and all those kinds of things. So Naomi, super great to have you in this role.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm really excited. It just seems like a really natural flow from what's going on. So
Absolutely.
It's great. Yeah.
She's also going to be helping with future trainings as well, much like this video here, but even as we do our in-person stuff. In fact, we've got one coming up here pretty soon.
Yes, we do. So that's going to be on Sunday, March the 6th. It's going to be right after service. We're going to meet in the hospitality room. We're going to have lunch, and we are going to have discussion and training, and it's just going to be a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
So just plan for like a 1 to 3 kind of
Yeah.
thing. We might get out a little earlier than that, but it's going to be a really great time together. Make sure you put it on your calendar now so that we can have as many leaders and apprentices and coaches,
Yes,
that's right,
that's
here
right.
as possible. God is doing some really good things through these community groups, and we want to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to help equip you to be as effective as possible in leading disciple makers.